This week, Kumar and Emmet discuss the graphic novel Eileen Gray, a comic about a real-life architect who should be much better known than she is. This is a flashback episode from August 28, 2019, with a brand new intro from Emmet. First, I'd like to thank our patrons for helping to keep the show going. You can pitch in by pledging at least $2 a month at patreon.com/deconcomics. This is Tim, and this is Deconstructing Comics.
Hello everyone, this is Emmet from the far-off present time of 2025, giving you an introduction to an episode of Deconstructing Comics from 2019, when a far younger, pre-COVID plague Kumar and Emmet discuss the comic book Eileen Gray, A House Under the Sun, from No Brow Press, by Charlotte Malterre-Barthes and Zosia Dzierzawska. Now, why am I talking to you about this? Well, another movie has come out about Eileen Gray. A wonderful movie titled E1027, Eileen Gray and the House by the Sea, directed by Beatrice Menger and Christoph Schaub. It stars Natalie Randall-Kirk as the title character, Eileen Gray. And Kumar and I went to see this in Melbourne as part of the Design Festival, a special screening of the film. And we thought it would be an opportunity to maybe shine some light not only on the life of Eileen Gray and spread the word about her talent and her ability and how we should be celebrating her legacy, but also maybe call attention to this discussion of this wonderful comic book, which also sought to do the same. The film, it's an excellent film. Very interesting use of dramatized reenactments of moments in time from Gray's life, as well as documentary footage spliced in amongst these scenes. And, you know, I felt that this was a similar project to the comic book by Malterre-Barthes and Dzierzawska, where we had the comic page be used to highlight Gray's own approach to design and colour and structure. Somehow the page layouts, the way we were led through the pages of this book, captured her own work, in particular her masterpiece structure, E1027, which still is standing, and which is quite impressively for the filmmakers. They actually shot sequences from Gray's life within the building itself. The film also stars Axel Mustache as Jane Badovici, who was Gray's partner, and Charles Morellon as Le Corbusier, who becomes something of a rival, if not the villain of the piece. Why? Read the comic to find out. I would suspect you'd have an easier time of reading this comic book than you would, unfortunately, finding the film, because I don't see any immediate means to download or stream or watch the movie in physical media. But this comic book is out there, and you can read that, and it's great. So I just wanted to once again highlight this review. We had a lot of fun discussing the book. I hope you enjoy listening to it again. And also, if you do have an opportunity to see this latest film about the life of Eileen Gray and celebrate what she means to the field of architecture, to the idea of an Irish woman whose talent was overlooked in her time, do take a chance of it. I think you'll appreciate it. Thanks, folks.
Welcome to Deconstructing Comics. Kumar and Emmet at Emmet's place again.
Yep, my living room.
It's great that we can do this because we don't get to do a lot of both people in the same room on this show. We're in Melbourne, did I say that? And we were talking about this. So we got sent a bunch of review PDFs from No Brow.
Yeah.
The one that jumped out at me was this book called Eileen Gray, A House Under the Sun. Mm-hmm. by Charlotte Malterre-Barthes and Zosia Dzierzawska.
Dzierzawska, yeah.
We don't know how to pronounce the name. They're very distinctly European, especially Zosia's.
Point of information. We just spent a good 5 minutes workshopping how to pronounce these names, and I'm not trying to speak from any position of privilege in that, because I listened to a podcast, Doom Rocket podcast, and they read out something I had said to them over Twitter, and they pronounced my surname Okuana, and I was going, it's Okuna.
Right.
It's Okuna. It's very simple. So my heart, I'm very apologetic.
Sure. Well, I mean, I'm sure my name might have been said by someone out there in some strange way. Anyway, this book is, I guess, the first book about architecture we've done since Asterios Polyp 10 years ago or so. The first comic that I've read. I'm sure there might have been more out there, but this is a non-fiction book about an architect named Eileen Gray, who seems to have been erased from history, maybe just for being a woman. She died in 1976, and her work wasn't kind of rediscovered until 1970, it seems, and a lot of her work had been attributed to men after she had done it. And she was started as an interior designer, and she was making kind of art objects, and also she was doing lacquerware, and this
is in Paris, and she came from a very late in life upper class part of Irish society, Anglo-Irish society, and she moves to Paris to find herself, and of course there's all these people in Paris at that time, this sort of bohemian era,
so roaring 20s,
who are happy to be wealthy and rich and bohemian and spend their money on ridiculous objects, and she happens to be somebody who can afford to live in this space and be genuinely talented and inspired at the same time.
Right.
So
she's rich, which is comes up twice. I mean, we see in the opening pages she's got a servant in this house that she's built, and then later on she opens her own shop to sell her interior wares, let's call them. And somebody reads some comment about her that basically her approach is, if the art is failing, the piece of art is failing, abandon it and start again. And the people even comment, oh, she must be wealthy if she can afford to do that, to buy the artist materials and do that. So but I'd never heard of this person. I guess that's almost the point of the book. And then I guess as soon as you read the title, you're like, oh, this is about an Irish architect, I'm in. And then as we were getting ready, you discovered a trailer for a movie that had come out maybe 7 or 8 years ago. And then you sent me a link to an article that mentioned that there were actually 2 movies in recent years. And then looking at the bibliography of this, there are 2 complete biographies of her. One was written in 2007, one was written in 2009. So this comic itself seems like part of a resurgence.
Yeah, and it's also worth mentioning that when you open the title page of Eileen Gray, we don't have author, artist, breakdown. It's Charlotte Malterre-Barthes and Zosia Dzierzawska, and they're the creators.
Right.
And this is very much a collaborative work.
Yes.
What I can gather from that is that they seem to have worked on the story, worked on how to present the story. Malterre-Barthes seems to be an architect, intellectual, academic, all that. And through this interaction between them, we have this presentation of Eileen Gray's life. And this seems to be coming at the tail end of that new resurgence of interest in Eileen Gray. Right. So I was extremely excited when you recommended. You suggest we're off to the theatre after this, so we were trying to say, what can we turn around quickly? And then of course I went down a rabbit hole on this. Right. I went to all these researched areas. I am not familiar with Eileen Gray's work, and I am extremely mad that she's not been celebrated in Ireland. Not only as a architect, but also as a sort of prefigure of the whole modernist movement, as a queer icon, as somebody who, she came from this quite wealthy class in Ireland and I think there has been a lot of erasure of that as well.
Right.
W.E.B. Yeats, famously, who's very pro-nationalist, but himself was Anglo-Irish, felt boxed in by the Republican movement when they came to power, because he said, we were trying to represent the people in Ireland, we were trying to speak on behalf of the people who did not have the opportunity to. We had the privilege as the Anglo-Irish. This is Yeats speaking, and now I find that I'm being put to the side because I'm inconvenient for the narrative of a resurgent Ireland. So maybe she's a victim of that too.
Right.
Never mind the fact that she's a woman. Never mind the fact that she's a queer woman.
Yeah.
You know, so there's all these things, these sort of layers of burial that I was interested in trying to uncover. And what I like about this comic is they touch on all of these things, but very lightly.
Well,
it's not too slavish, is my point.
Okay, I'm going to say I thought this was a really interesting book.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
It's kind of in the no-brow, let's call it house style, which
Sure.
is unfair to say, but I mean, it's dots for eyes, you know, on the characters. It's something, there's...
I was going to suggest that Nobrow's own catalogue of books are quite modernist in how they use space,
right,
and how they're quite minimalist, how
right,
they try, it's all about function, you know. Sorry, carry on.
Well, I was going to say, she almost looks like Kate Beaton, but really very, very beautiful. Looks like it's drawn with very soft pencils, and I don't know if it's colored with watercolors. It's really beautiful, and it's interesting how you talk about the collaboration, because it's, I don't think Barthes.
You're thinking of Zosia, yeah.
I was thinking of Zosia Mamet.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with this. I think Barthes, I don't think she's written any other comics, but it's some of the art choices are amazing. Like sometimes there's a repeat of panels. It's hard to describe, but there's one shot where we see the house in 1956, and then it's like a 2-page spread, and then it's a smash cut on the next page to 1933, and it's the only thing. There's no other building. Then it's nighttime. There's a change of colors. The trees are smaller. Those kinds of decisions are very hard for a writer to...
Yeah, we need to establish the moment you've just described, because I think it's a powerful moment. So the book starts with Le Corbusier dying.
Right.
Who has been identified in lots of these sort of superficial adaptations of Eileen Gray's life as the villain, as the sort of evil man who appropriated her work and destroyed and distorted her legacy. And we open here with a scene where he walks out into the ocean and drowns, and his body is recovered from the ocean, and we see all these people fussing over his body, saying, "Oh, how sad! Le Corbusier, this great genius, this artistic genius, has died
in front of his house."
Yeah,
next to the house in front of that restaurant, and the whole point is that there were no restaurants or anything.
Yes.
Then you get the smash cut to the no restaurants or anything. Right.
So you have him taking over her house, in effect, attracting all this attention to the area, which she explicitly chose because it was secluded. She wanted to go back to her memory of what this place was like.
Right.
She talks about how Saint-Tropez had been this very sort of bucolic almost space.
Right. The house is on the French Riviera.
Yes.
Right.
It's not far away from Saint-Tropez. So she's trying to recover a sense of the past that had been lost and have a place where you can rest and you can spend time. And that's part of her whole philosophy of a home. And then he's come in with his celebrity. He's distorted her legacy. He's taken over the house. And all these other people have moved in around. And as you say, the trip back in time, that spread to spread smash cut is just this incredible opening moment.
Yeah.
There are other moments in this book that I love, like the arrival of Damia at her the launch for Jean Désert, which is Eileen Gray's lacquer shop. Great moment. It's almost... And there's also a sequence where Eileen Gray is having these memories of her relationship with Jean. And you've got who, in every account I've read of this woman's life, Jean's mentioned as the Romanian architect.
Right.
Jean Boudou, you know. And I'm going, okay, he's Romanian, guys.
Yeah.
I'm being told on authority he's Romanian. But we see all these moments, this montage sequence of their burgeoning relationship. And I thought it was beautiful how Dzierzawska laid it all out.
Yeah.
Because you've got... Montage is a cinematic technique, and it's frequently used when you're doing flashback. absolutely makes sense here. But they're minimized. They're like these little points of memory on a blank canvas of paper. I thought it was stunning. As you say, the choices are amazing.
Yes. But where I was getting to was as much as I loved all that stuff and the art and the smash cuts, there's a couple more of those that I want to talk about that are amazing, that I think really has to be a collaborative kind of thing. You were talking about the light touches, and I think in some cases it's too light, because I think in the drawings of the comic itself, Eileen Gray's hanging out with this bohemian artistic circle in the left bank in 1920s. Her friend shows up. She's dressed kind of mannishly. She goes to this party. This singer, Damia, shows up with a panther on a leash.
Yeah.
And gives her a full kiss on the lips. And there's no... And that's kind of it. Now, a reader has to know a lot to uncode that. And you get to the end of the book and you don't really know... She never says in the book, you never see them in bed together. It's not until the afterward where you get biographical details in text where it says Damia and Eileen were lovers, and Eileen had named a lot of the furniture secretly after Damia. And I feel like the touch was almost too light in that respect. There's a scene where she's in her house, the one on the Riviera, and they're having a house party, and she pulls out a record to play while people are there, and it's a Damia record, and she decides against it and puts it back and kind of pulls out a generic jazz record. And you don't really know how to unpack that moment as like, did she do it because she's far from the bohemian scene, or did she do it because she's kind of private about that side? And if you read all the other websites and stuff, it's interesting because there's the introduction to this book suggests, which was written by someone else, suggests that Eileen...
Yeah, an Irish gallery curator.
Suggests that Eileen destroyed her records because she wanted her work to speak for itself. But that website you sent me said she destroyed because she didn't want people to find out about her private relationships with Damia and stuff like, which is, I don't know how speculative that is, but it seems like there's more there. And there's also a sequence where we get her youth when she's about 10 years old, and her father has abandoned the family and gone off to paint in Italy. He's an amateur painter, but he's gone off to Italy to paint. And there's a scene where she's walking around her house at night looking for her father, and the servant comes up and says, "You know your father's not here. Why are you out of bed? Go back to bed." And she's not sleepwalking, she's lucid. And it's a very odd moment. Like, we don't know why she was looking for her father when she knew he wasn't there. But we also don't know why this specific scene was chosen for this book. Like, how does it inform her artistic life?
I could speak to that briefly.
Sure.
I think number one, the figure of Eileen Gray's father fascinates me.
Yeah.
This
the
man,
two panels that he's in.
This man who fancied himself yet another bohemian monkey.
Right.
You know, like if only this dreadful life in Enniscorthy and Wexford wasn't holding me back, I could be a great artist. You know, and he abandons the family, and then his ex-wife, his partner, spouse, however they typified divorce in 19th century Ireland, inherits a baronet. She becomes a baroness. And so now the family's entitled to royal peerage. And he changes his name to Smith Gray.
Right.
So he's left the family, but and then he comes back, "Oh, but I'm part of the family too. I'm also entitled to this," you know. So I just find that whole idea of him being so parasitic fascinating. But
that's an interesting reflection on events later in the book as well.
Yeah, and with Jean, because I think there's an echoing with him and his ability to latch onto important artistic people and to claim credit when none is due to him. So I think there is something there. I also think that it's just one of those typified moments of alienation in an artist's life that occasionally are useful for, say, an adaptation of someone's life. This moment, this shock, this break that sets them on a different path.
Right.
So they're not of the norm. They're artistically inclined. Well, how did they become artistically inclined? Well, maybe there was a break. Maybe there was some sort of trauma. Maybe there was some... And I think that's just what that's meant to illustrate.
Right.
But yeah, the life of Eileen Gray in Ireland, as I said, I was not familiar with her. I didn't know her. But once I started reading this, I actually reached out to a friend of mine from Wexford. And I was like, do you know anything about Eileen Gray?
Right.
And he was saying, I've never heard of her before, but it turns out I've walked past her house every day.
Right.
Like the house where she grew up. But he's like, I know her house. And as you say, I was sending you all these links, and one of the links had this sad little note where somebody asked her where she was from, because she's one of these rootless cosmopolitans that, you know, we used to hear a lot about. Very much a, you know, proto-European. And she gave an interview late in life in her 70s where she talked about, well, if I can say I'm anywhere, I'm from Ireland. But she hadn't lived in Ireland for most of her life.
Right.
Although I think she'd been recognised in her 70s in Ireland. They gave sort of, when her reputation was slowly being recovered, they did try and give her some account. But I don't think like I said, I'm just shocked I've never heard of her. I'm shocked I've never heard of her.
Right. But do you feel, how do you feel about, so we get that scene where she's looking for her father in the house at night. We get a scene where she has kind of excluded herself from this badminton or tennis that the other kids are playing and finds a wheelchair and careens down a hill on it gleefully as a wheel has popped off and is flying off it.
Yeah.
And her other friends are like, whoa, what are you doing? And she's like, how do you think those scenes, because I think this is a no-brow kind of, again, it's a house style kind of thing where this is a slim book. It's 150 pages or so. About 10 pages of that is frontispieces for chapters. It's very a lean, athletic book. But when you're that short on space, every second, like choosing the Damia record, has to count. And what do you make of those scenes? And do you feel that those scenes somehow... Because also, what I love about this book is it's not really about the life of Eileen Gray. It's about a moment in her life, or the moments that led her to building this house and the aftermath of that. It's very specific. And it also tries to capture her emotional or maybe even philosophical state of mind around the construction of the house. Do we feel that those childhood moments are actually contributing anything to that? And if you feel yes, what do you think is being contributed?
Well, I mean, the film we've talked about in the past half an hour is it's by an Irish director, Mary McGuckian, and it's called Eileen Gray, The Price of Desire. And I think the difference between that production and this is that is one of those sort of narrative films that takes the events of somebody's life and oversimplifies and then also makes too dense. Adds too much detail. And there were moments in this comic where I was afraid that you have Eileen Gray or her admirers or her peers saying, well, as you know, etc., 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 etc. And I was like, oh, I hate this. I hate when people turn into exposition dump machines.
Right.
But I actually thought the art really complemented that very well. So because the art is so light and so simple, you have these moments of levity, as you just used the adjective athletic. I think that speaks really well to this book. And that moves you through. You have a sense as a reader, oh, okay, all this stuff happened. I have all these different rabbit holes I can now go down if I want to, if I choose to. But I'm getting a sense of a panoply of someone's life. Like all these things happened in this one woman's life.
Right.
And even the moment with the wheelchair, it's not dwelled on. It's not meant to be some sort of secret coda or pre-coda to the events of the life, but it gives you this sense of whimsy and fun, and that she's just odd. She's doing an odd thing. She's setting herself apart. That's all it's meant to show.
Right.
And that's where this collaboration between these two creators really speaks for itself. I think there's somebody who knows a lot about Eileen Gray's life as a student of architecture, and there's somebody who knows a lot about how to render dynamism on the panel, on the page. And between the two of them, they've achieved something here which I think has a fluidity, has a speed, has a quickness that I was really moved by it, actually.
Yeah. I actually think maybe the best page in the book is the very last drawn page, which is just almost a grid of Eileen at every age in her life. It's probably about 20 drawings of her from being a 6-year-old child to being she must have been 90 or something when she died. And is almost a completely different person in every one of those drawings. And it's really remarkable. And it's something else that it kind of comes up a little bit in the book, is we don't hear her talk about herself, but somebody calls her stoic or something at one stage. I even wrote it down in my notes. I won't be able to find it. And the later stage, Jean Badeau, her lover, talks about her sometimes having these explosions of violence and smashing things, but we never see that. We only get his description of that, and we don't really see her being grim and stuck a little bit.
But it was almost a way of dismissing her. But
Yes.
then Le Corbusier, who is this aggressive personality who takes over a room in her house and decides to do a mural, and Jean is basically impotent and doesn't stop him from
Right.
doing this. His manner, his behavior is seen as passionate and intense and powerful, whereas she clearly also had these manic episodes where she needed to create something.
Yes.
And that is, she's been difficult, she's been strange, she's been
Right.
So I think it's drawing out that gender distinction.
Oh, you're so right, yeah.
Which I feel in a movie where Le Corbusier is like literally twirling his mustache and laughing evilly as he paints on her wall. That would be how that sequence, that moment, becomes leaden and becomes too solid. Whereas in this comic, this is what I mean by the touches. It feels as if you have a sense of, right, she has been erased, she has been neglected, she has been buried in history, but what she did is worthy of account.
Sure.
And it's just because of the gender dynamic of our time, of our society, that her fate has been this one, but what she was actually doing was not especially different. And not having her defend herself, like speaking to the camera and saying, well, actually, I'm amazing and here's why. I think that would be too on the nose. And they avoid that entirely.
Well, yeah, and I think the whole... I don't know, are we jumping ahead by talking about Corbu? Le Corbu is what they call him. I don't remember his actual name, but his art name is Le Corbu. He's known as Le Corbu. So in the book, it's quite an amazing sequence. So Eileen is not there. Le Corbu and Jean Badeau are hanging out in the house. It's night at the house. Corbu wakes up in the night, or no, he's not up at night. He's looking at art magazines or journals, and they're kind of abstract nudes.
Yeah.
And he strips himself naked, and he accidentally bumps into something, which causes loud noise, which wakes up Jean. Jean says, "What are you doing?" And he's got Le Corbu has the paints out. He's like, I'm going to improve these walls. I'm going to paint it. She's going to love it. He's like, look, I don't think she's going to like it. But it's almost... so he's completely naked. And my reaction to this was, it's almost pornographic, the scene. Because he's been looking at nudes. He strips himself naked. Then he starts painting these walls. And we get a 2-page spread of Jean, who had been objecting to it, taking pictures while it's happening.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so first thing is I'm reading this and going, holy shit, did this really happen?
I think this moment is meant to illustrate myth making. Like, this is how they told the story.
Well, but then he's taking pictures and I'm like, are there photographs of this?
Yeah, I'm
is
sure
there
there are.
photograph? Okay.
Yeah.
So it turns out that there are photos, but according to the link you sent me, they may have been of a different location of him painting the mural in the nude. It might not have happened at this specific house. He might have had his clothes on. Let's say.
Right.
The same article also talked about how, now I'm looking at these and they just look like abstract shapes, but this article you sent me specifically describes them as being sexual. And I thought, oh, that's interesting, because my feeling was that whole scene was totally
Right.
sexual.
Did I send you the Architecture Magazine article on Eileen Gray's house?
I don't remember which one. You sent me one.
There was a fantastic account of her work, and it talked about the house, and I'm going to get the name of the house here. So it's E1027, which is meant to represent Eileen and Jean's names. It's meant to describe them. It's an acronym, in effect, for the two of them. And it's a house she built for the two of them. But she talks in the comic about how she is getting away from gender. In in the use of space, it has been degendered, and this idea of camping in your own home, where you're not trapped in rooms specific to your gender, such as the kitchen. And given her childhood, and given the abandonment of her father, and given the fact that her mother was basically left to raise the family, what that meant, and also she knows serving women, and she's gone up with them all her life. And she refused to have that life. She refused. She wanted to be the bohemian.
And this guy literally gets his dick out.
Yeah. And here's the other thing as well, though. Somebody was talking about her art and the way she designates the use of space. And they talked about how the house itself has an erotic charge.
Right.
That there are rooms where you're meant to make love.
Yes, that was the article he sent me,
Yeah. I really like that idea. This idea of, you can have fun in this house and you can have sex in this house, and it's not restricted to a specific like breeding space.
Right.
It's meant to be playful. And then he comes in and he chooses a specific space. Yeah. And that's where he puts his desire.
Yes.
And then it's like, this is now
purely
and now
sexual.
I have transformed this house because I have brought my essence.
And then he talks about it and later they show him having an interview where he talks about how much he's improved it.
Yeah.
Don't know if I.
And it's now they refer to it with Jean's. It's Jean's house now. It's not Eileen's house.
He says I animated them. He's talking about the walls. I animated them. And he talks about the addition of spiritual value throughout the house. That he's so arrogant. He's such a grade A jerk in this book. It's amazing. And it's not the mustache twirling. It's just the way he talks about it. Yeah. But it's very interesting, too, that Jean is woken up by a bump in the night. And he's like, I don't think Eileen's going to like this. And like Corbu's like, no, don't worry about it. She'll love it. It's going to improve the walls in the house. And he has all these philosophical ideas about how it's going to improve it. And then we see in the same interview where he's being interviewed, he's got this cartoon swirl over his head. He's looking down. He's very upset about it. And he's like, Eileen refuses to come back to the house. I mean, we don't, and that's interesting because that is contradicted by the introduction of the book, which says that he commissioned Corbu to do these murals. In the same book, there's a contradiction. And then we get the same article you sent me said that the nude stuff was done, those photos were from another house. So
I think
there's a level of, I don't know, fictionalizing, or was she trying to... Were they trying to show Jean Badaud in a better light? Because it's interesting, too, that as their relationship breaks down, he's kind of a womanizer, but they're in an open relationship, and he knows about her lovers. And, again, everything is done so subtly. There's one line where he says, your kikis.
Your kikis, yeah.
Your kiki, you can see your kikis or whatever. But there's a dinner party. She sees him flirting with a very young woman, maybe 20, and then afterwards she's like, look, we agreed, we're in an open relationship, you can do whatever you want, but I don't like you bringing these underage girls to the house. And he's like, she's not underage, she's 18. And she's like, she's young, and then Eileen says younger than me. Now I'm like, okay, so he's also kind of a jerk. And then later I was reading one of his articles, somewhere I read, mentioned that she was actually 15 years older than Jean. That's not mentioned anywhere in this book. You have no sense of their ages. And at this stage, I had to work it out. She would have been about 55 and he would have been 40, which is still too old for this 18-year-old girl. Yeah. But if I'd known that they were 15 years different, I would have looked at that line about him going for younger girls a lot differently.
Sure.
Coming up, whose idea was it to tell this story out of chronology, and why? And much more. This podcast is part of the Deconstructing Comics Network, where we're grateful to our supporters on Patreon. Patrons get exclusive extra content, Pledge $2 a month or more and get Batman 66 podcast Bat Bits and occasional trivia videos. Most recently, we presented trivia about 90125, the 1983 album from Yes. In the next few Bat Bits episodes, we'll discuss early drafts of the script for The Bookworm Turns. At $4 a month, you also get our new monthly show Silver Age Batman, where I'm moving through the book Batman in the 50s, issue by issue, with a rotating second chair of Paul, Emmet, Patrick, or Kumar. Follow our Patreon for free and you can hear the first 2 episodes of both Bat Bits and Silver Age Batman. Check it out at patreon.com/deconcomics, and thanks for your support.
Hey, I'm Jen.
And I'm Sean. We're here to tell you about our podcast, Worst Collection Ever.
And this is the show where we tell you about the worst comic book collection in existence. And it just happens to belong to us.
We have some of the worst comics from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. They're bad. They're not worth anything.
No good.
Why do we own them?
Bad.
I own a number of issues of Terror Inc. and Guy Gardner.
Basically, we go around to local comic book stores and we buy everything we can out of dollar boxes.
We tell you about the weird stuff in them. We tell you about stuff that's related to them. We go into tangents. And we're very uninformed, so...
Oh my god, totally. But totally check out our podcast because you'll hear us just talk and joke about Marvel books and DC books from God only knows when.
That's right. It's our show, Worst Collection Ever, every Tuesday on iTunes, Stitcher, anywhere you get your podcasts. Download, rate, subscribe, tell a friend.
It'll be good and terrible, but good.
But here's my question though. Doesn't the book invite you to look into it more? Look into her life more? Isn't this the invitation of this book?
Yeah, well, that's the question about it, is what are you supposed to get from this book on its own? And I never intended to read all those articles and go down the wormhole, but I did, and it unlocked a whole lot of other information that I had to write all these extra notes in here. I
don't know if you can pick up that, folks.
No, yeah,
he's
but
literally rustling through his papers.
I'm rustling my papers, and I have all these pen marks that were from after I read the book, and I feel like the book, I think it stands on its own, but I think when you go outside of it, on its own within the drawings of the 120 pages in the middle, when you add the introduction and when you add all the biographical detail at the end, it already seems like there's stuff missing from the I don't know what to call the text, the drawings, the meat. And again, it's a thing where Nobrow puts out these short books. They tend to, and I guess that's the sensible economic model. I don't know that they can put out a 200-page or 250-page book. I don't think that you can ask them to draw another 100 pages with this level of intensity, because it is very considered artwork and there's a lot of passion in the colors, and you can see the work that goes into it, and you can't really ask for more than what it is. But I do feel like it was that 120 pages was was it not meaty enough?
I feel it's a sort of extension of Gray's own approach to architecture.
Right.
This sort of lightness, this use of space in a very the very same use of space that a group you see in this book is shown to say, oh well, it's there's nothing here. It's very gray. There's nothing.
Right.
There is nothing of substance here. But of course, her idea was that function shouldn't be dictated. Like a house is not a machine, she says. It's
right.
not something that dictates how you use the house. It's something that is open to your interpretation. And I feel like the book is trying to follow that same philosophy.
Sure.
And there's also an idea which emerges through the book, which is this concept of reason, of rationality, of there needs to be a meaning, a specific meaning, and it needs to be laid out for you, is a masculine approach to thinking, which excludes women, because we don't hear from women. So we don't get the full story. So it's the men who tell the story. So when they say, oh, well, this is reason, this is rationality, this is how things are, well, no, we're only getting a half of a sense of how things are.
Right.
And the other sense is the one that doesn't get seen, doesn't get heard. And I feel as if she, in her use of pseudonyms, I'm talking about Eileen Gray, in the whole idea of Jean Désert, this idea of she poses as a man to open a business because she knows that's the only way she can open a business. Her work stands for itself. It is functional, but not in a dictatorial way, as Le Corbusier is trying to argue.
Right.
And then he erases it. He literally overcomes it, you know, and then claims, I've brought meaning to it.
Yeah.
Because meaning has to be stated directly in order for it to be meaty, in order for it to have... And even the approach of Dzierzawska, I think, is very similar too, because just as you were speaking, you were talking about substance, you were talking about the meat of the comic, and I was thinking of like those legions of Brian Bolans out there who, you know, these really densely packed with detailed panels.
Yeah.
And how exhausting they can be to read sometimes. I'm not knocking a lot of it. I think it's beautiful work at times, but also there's sometimes I just want something that just engages me emotionally and moves me along. Yeah. And I feel that's what this book does.
I agree with that completely. And I think the two of the most powerful artistic moments, well, also the death of Corbu at the beginning of the book,
stunning.
He goes into the water. You get 6 silent panels of him just wandering out. The waves are very wavy. And then you get a full-page splash of just the waves. And it's almost like he was consumed by the nature that he was fighting against in this giant panel that you have to look at. He's consumed by this thing that he... Defaced. Defaced is the word that they use in the afterword of the book. One moment is... there's a dream sequence, again, very interesting when you've only got 140 pages.
Do you want to bring this up? The one where she's all the different ideas for her style that she's having.
Well, this is the one where she's dreaming, she's crawling through this kind of messed up architecture. It's almost very traditional Gothic or 19th century architecture. And then as she emerges from it, she ends up in this space which is almost like a color Matisse. It's very abstract, and it's just like a woman's figure, but in color. And I thought that going from very concrete, almost literally concrete, to just soft shapes, soft masses of color which form recognizable shapes was amazing. There's another panel where you get an overhead shot of the house, which is cutaway. So it's like, what do you call that when they... It's almost like a cross, not quite a cross-section, but you can see the shapes of the walls inside the rooms, and it's a 2-page spread. And then you smash cut when you turn over to the same shot, but it's just turned into almost a gray block. Yeah. Like a gray or purple blur or something like that.
They've been fighting over the house itself and their relationship, and this house is meant to be representative of their relationship, and now it's been reduced to an object.
Yes.
It's been made a block.
Yeah, and there's another one, a 2-page one where, imagine a 2-page spread, but it's divided into 2 full-page splashes. Yep. And they're having a party, and everybody's swimming, and the left half is just people swimming in the water, and you can't see the house. You only get an edge of bricks at the bottom corner, and then the right page is the house, and it's amazing because it's actually one image, but on one side it's pure nature and with the people swimming in it, and the other side it's the house in that nature, and it's almost like look what was hidden by view almost. And I think that stuff was super powerful, and I think that is as much as I'm complaining about the lack of meat, that is the meat of it. I think those moments,
and I think it's one of those comics that encourages you to spend time with these spaces, and then like even the house itself, she had written on the wall, you know, in French she had written, you know, enter slowly, like come into this place slowly. Yeah. You know, and I feel like the comic is also saying, look, spend your time here. Let's just go through this. I think you're right. I mean, that Nobrow has produced a lot of content in the past which has a similar approach, not just in terms of the style you mentioned, but also this idea of waiting on the pages.
Yeah.
There also was a no-brow text on, was it Thomas Moses?
Okay.
Who's this, New York architect, and there are lots of divisive opinions about him as a man, because he is regarded as being responsible for gentrifying a lot of spaces and
Right.
Erasing the ethnic diversity of New York. I think he comes up in the podcast The Dollop in an episode,
Okay.
and they did not like him. But I've read the comic that Nobel put out about him as well, and that also had these amazing 2-page spreads of cityscapes, these densely packed cities, but you had this stunning sort of view of them, and they almost look like nature. The way the artist has laid it out, and I felt the same way about that. Where I need to spend time with this and just watch this comic, if you like. So that was something that struck me as well. And for the purpose of this review, I read through this comic quite quickly. But then I immediately went onto the No-Brow store and you've made a sale, okay? You've made a sale, because I want to hold it in my hands. I don't want a PDF. I want to actually hold this and give it to people and say, read this comic.
I will say I usually hate PDFs, but this time, having the 2-page spreads without the spine interrupting them, and being able to just scroll down and see those smash cuts was really effective. This is the first comic I've read for the show, I think, where I thought it was kind of... It functioned as well on screen, or if not better, than it would on paper.
Yeah. I also wanted to mention, you talked briefly about the left bank movement that she was a part of. And there's a sequence where she poses for a photograph. And the photographer saying, "Oh, well, you're part of my left bank collection." And the line reads, so Eileen Gray looks over the other examples of these photos from this collection. And her line is, "I see a pattern emerging, Berenice." And you've got Cocteau, you've got Gide, you've got Sylvia Beach, you've got Jane Heap, and the implication, and again, it's a very light implication, but the implication, quite an obvious one, is that they're all queer.
Right.
And that's part of what left bank means in this case. So this photographer is accounting for this whole spirit of the age and all these queer icons who were becoming quite famous at that time. And history, again, has sort of erased a lot of how sexuality was presented in those times, because, as you said, you mentioned that Gray had potentially destroyed her notes out of discretion about her relationships. And you implied that maybe there was some sort of present-day morality intruding on what that actually event was meant.
That's the idea I got from that website. That's what that suggested,
Because if you look at the age, if you look at the 20s in particular, there was this sense of queerness as a lived-in thing that just was. It wasn't spoken of in the same way that we would think it would be spoken of. And I think a lot of the fascist agenda of the 30s was to crush that as well. That was part of the historical moment of fascism, and I think we need to recognize that these people were happy, were creative, were brilliant, and did all these amazing things, and it wasn't some sort of unusual thing to be open and queer in Paris in the 1920s. I think it was quite just as it was.
Yeah.
And I think the book, just because of its lightness of touch and because it just presents that, we get a sense of that time just through that moment.
Yeah. Well, the party sequence too, again, it's another one of those things where you see this party where this woman this chanteuse has shown up with a panther on a leash.
Yeah.
And it's just like 2-page spreads, and it might be 2 or 3 even, silent, just partying almost, and you can see them lounging around, and you totally get a sense of that that time. Yeah, very interesting.
I thought it was really well done, and credit to the creators, just for the sense of time, the sense of history that they bring to it, as well as the sense of style.
We should mention too that it's not chronological, and that's a very, as far as we know, this writer has not written other comics or before. There's not any in her bio on the back cover. to make a choice to try to depict the inner emotional life of this character in non-chronological order is very ballsy.
Well, that's why I wanted to stress the importance of collaboration here, because I'm not sure who that choice was made by.
Right.
So I think it's important to note that Dzierzawska herself is also a writer, comics writer and artist. And what I thought was interesting about that, achronological approach to the story of Eileen Gray was that it defeats that idea that we have of, say, a great man has a childhood, has a coming of age, and then has success.
Right.
So there's this sense of a natural development,
right?
And that's the way narrative is structured in those stories. Whereas these are moments in time. These are showing what this person went through, and we don't have. It sort of frustrates that sense of, oh well, there has to be a success coming, but no, history intruded.
Right.
The Nazis used our house for target practice.
Right.
This is a very specific choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was interesting too because I read the book 3 times for this recording. The first time I just read it closely, didn't take any notes. Second time I was going to take notes. I was like, I would note some things I remembered. And I was like, after the murals are done, after the walls are defaced by Corbu, she never returns to the house. And I'm like, oh, so in my memory it was like, okay, so we don't see her in the house again after that. It's like the house is defaced, she never comes back, the end. But that's not the case. Because it's non-chronological, we actually see a scene of her in the house, the last couple of pages, where she's just hanging out on the balcony, looking out, and it's like twilight or evening. And it was kind of a relief, because I was like not looking forward to seeing the Corbu be such a jerk again, and then her just like give up on this relationship and leave forever.
Yeah.
We actually get to see her. But it's very interesting because the last 2 pages is again a double page spread of the house, the woods, and there's a road and there's a truck going by that's pumping some pollution into the air. So you can kind of see a touch of what's going to come in the future in that moment. And then there's a quote from her. What was it? It was something about better to start anew.
Yeah.
She says, let go of your memories, better to start anew. And it's because it's non-chronological, it's such a perfect moment to...
Did you ever see that Alex Cox film, Walker?
No.
With Ed Harris? He
No.
plays the historical... the man who gave George W. Bush his W. Walker, who's this sort of American adventurer, and he went down to South America and basically was a professional invader, if you like.
Okay.
He was there to invade and acquire assets for his masters back in America. But Cox does this really interesting thing where when Walker is fighting these wars and he's advancing through the region, we have these moments where present time intrudes on past time.
Right.
So they'll be going down a country road, and then the sports car will come racing past.
Right, okay.
And not commented on, not dwelled on. It's just there.
Right.
And it's just the sense of these are the choices that will lead to this present time being made manifest.
Right.
And I really like that idea of playing with time and just letting time mess around.
Yeah.
And this, again, I keep using the word light, but this does do that too. Not as ostentatiously, and not in a way that's on the nose, not calling attention to itself too much. That's why I like it. I feel there's almost a sense of...
You do have to pay attention, though.
Yeah.
Because you have to pay attention to the caption, which says 1933 or 1924. Or
That's important too.
Yeah.
That just gives you a sense of location.
Yeah.
But, we don't have characters walking on saying, gosh, I like that jazz music. What do you think? Like this
Right,
sort of
right.
overly done referential dialogue.
Right.
There's none of that here. No, I'm so glad you chose this for us to talk about, man, because I really had a good time with it.
Yeah, it's great. It is an accomplishment, especially for a team which at least half of which does not have that much experience in comics. It seems like it's really pretty an amazing photograph of her emotional life at one. I don't want to say one moment in history because it's some moments in history.
Yeah.
Let's say, yeah.
There's another sequence I just want to quickly mention,
Sure.
and it sort of speaks to the quality of the art and the quality of this collaboration on how they tried to understand Eileen Gray's life. But there's a moment where Jean's pushing her to build a house.
Yep.
And again, I guess this would be seen as, oh, the man actually gave her the idea to do the thing that she's most known for. But the comic frustrates that, because it's almost as if she knows she can do it, but she doesn't know if she wants to commit to doing it, because then she's committing to him as well. That's part of it too.
Yes.
And then she starts becoming inspired. But how they visualize that in this comic is, it's like she's taken out a piece of paper to design on.
Oh,
and then
yeah.
she's constructed in space this cardboard
She unfolds the paper into the house.
Yeah.
It's,
That is
wow.
incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible choice.
Yes. 100%.
And, you know, this comic has these moments like that where it's like, we're not going to be realistic. We're not going to be out and out surreal, but we're going to have that perfect balance between the two.
She pulls a piece of paper out of her pocket and unfolds it into the house. The design is on it, but it is the house itself.
Which, of course, suggests that she had the idea already. Like, it was already there.
Yes.
You know.
She said she had the camping idea for a long time.
And then Jean later takes credit for, I had the idea for the roof of the house to be a usable space.
Well, this is another sequence. So it's a 2-page spread. It's a montage sequence, and we get her on site. So she lived on site for 2 years while they're building it, and we get lots of scenes of her dealing with the contractors and all this kind of stuff, and all the hard work she's put into it. And her line is, "I couldn't have done it without Jean's help." And then then he says, "Yes, I designed the thing on the roof," and she says, "Well, that hardly matters." So it is 3 lines. It's the same. It's 3 sequential lines of dialogue where she's like, "I couldn't have done it without him." He's like, "Yes, I did this," and she's like, "Well, that doesn't matter."
Yeah.
That was a funny.
Again, there's a interesting description of gender here. It's an interesting description of the necessities she needs to engage with just to get her work out there.
Yeah.
She needs to pay lip service to this idea of Jean being this responsible partner in the relationship, but whereas he's presented in the comic almost as like a feckless drunk who doesn't really do much.
Yeah.
Apologies, folks. I don't know if you can hear that. There's some construction work going on in the distance, and it's getting quite loud.
A helicopter.
Yeah, it's something quite noisy. So we might have to wrap it up here.
Yeah, that's great. I think we've I've got too many notes anyway. I don't remember what I've written.
I think we described almost every page in the book.
Yeah, every important page. But you really should see them for yourself because they're remarkable. I think.
Very good. Is there anything you want to plug before we go out?
Plug? No, can't think of.
All right, screw it. I will. I've got a comic out there, folks, that you can buy yourself. It's called Far Away. It's about wizards and bodily functions. It's written by myself. Art is by Jefferson Sadzinski and lettering by Thomas Maurer. And I published it, so you're not going to find it on any other publisher website, but you will find it on Comixology. So please give it a try.
Did you want to plug weren't you in the Grenfell anthology as well, or something?
Yes, 24 panels. Yeah, so Jeff and I did a comic for the 24 panels collection, which was raising money for the survivors of the Grenfell Towers disaster in London. It's published by Image. It's a very worthwhile project. Folks, really, this one I would encourage you to support. And we did a story called Abrek. And Cardinal Ray did the lettering on that, and she's gone on to some great things. Like, she's doing a lot of great stuff for Image, and I'm following her career with some interest. It's fascinating to see how important lettering is.
Yes.
Given how little it's discussed in comics journalism and comics commentary, but lettering is really important because that's the information you're giving directly to the reader. You know. Cardinal Ray, Jefferson Sadzinski, 2 people I've worked with, Thomas Maurer as well. Buy anything they do. They're great folks. I'm really happy they helped me get these 2 comics out into the world.
Excellent.
All right. Thanks, folks.
Eileen Gray, A House Under the Sun is published by Nobrow. Follow us on Blue Sky at Decon Comics. On Facebook, we have both a page and a group. Those are linked from deconstructingcomics.com, as is our YouTube channel, where our episodes are posted every week as videos of a single image. You can comment on our episodes on YouTube or on our site, or drop us a line at mail@deconstructingcomics.com, or talk to us. Click the Leave a Voicemail link on the left sidebar of our site. Are you making a comic? Send it to us and we'll do a Critiquing Comics episode about it. The 2019 Deconstructing Comics theme is from bensound.com. The music backing the promotion of our Patreon is Change by Jazar. Next week, here in 2025, another book from our friends at Avery Hill. Last year I did a brief solo review of Kit Anderson's Safer Places, which had somewhat of a through line but read as many short stories. Her new book, Second Shift, is a full-on graphic novel about isolation, although it's one of those books that takes multiple rereads to even start to get what it's really about. I'll be joined for the first time in quite a while by Loyola Marymount English professor Juan Ma'i Bush to review the new book, so we hope you'll join us for that. Till then, this is Tim, and thanks for listening to Deconstructing Comics.